Today on Transit Tangents, we are excited to be joined by Andrew Cassidy, the Senior Director of Digital Strategy for the MBTA. We filmed this interview midday in our Boston Using Only Public Transit episode, which came out last week if you haven't seen it yet. We'll discuss how the MBTA is regaining the trust of transit riders, how improvements to previous issues with slow zones is impacting the system, as well as the importance of communication for the agency. Let's jump right into the conversation with Andrew.
One of the things that we wanted to talk about that I know people who've listened to our show have been interested in, we've brought this up a couple times in previous episodes, is that MBTA has been working on this sort of modernization effort and looking to improve rail service. One of those big initiatives was eliminating slow zones in the city. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. A little bit of a history lesson, I suppose, to start. So back in 2022, we were undergoing all sorts of maintenance across our system, including an entire line shutdown of our Orange line, which runs generally north to south of Boston. And following all of that, we thought we had done a lot of great work, a lot of good. Lo and behold, fast forward to March of 2023, and we discover that certain documentation isn't available and certain work hadn't been performed, leading us to implement a global speed restriction across the entire MBTA system. I believe we were running at maybe 5 to 10 miles per hour on every single system until we were able to go out there, do that, the scans of the rails, and really be able to verify that our track was indeed safe. It was a very defeating moment, I think, for a lot of us, because we thought we had been doing a lot of work. The MBTA, like many transit systems, had been plagued with a lack of true investment to keep it going. And unfortunately, this was, the chickens coming home to roost. It was, that lack of investment for so long really is what led to, unfortunately, just that global state of disrepair. Shortly thereafter, this is March, we welcome a new administration at our State House, Governor Healy and her administration, and she appoints Phil Eng as our new general manager. And to say he hit the ground running would be a complete understatement, because he starts in April of that same year. So he's walking in, he knew what he was signing up for, but he's walking into, truthfully, just kind of probably the worst we've ever been. And didn't shy away from that challenge. Brought with him a phenomenal team that he had collected over his career, many of whom he had worked with in New York, whether that be with the MTA, Long Island Railroad, and slowly they started preparing to plan for what we call the track improvement program, which was to remove all slow zones across all lines, which was, we were at a credibility deficit at this time. And that's, I think, what was so difficult too. It was not only is there work to be done, but you had to be able to convince the riding public that we had really turned the ship. We had
because it had just happened where you'd gone out and done this work, and then come to find out like there were issues with it.
Of course, like what's going to be different now? Okay, new general manager, so what? New team, so what? And it became this piece, and this is partially where we started launching our podcast, Spilling the Tea, which was, we realized, we had moved forward with transparency across all of our communications, primarily on social media, but you can only say so much. Even if you have a 30-tweet Twitter thread, you can only say so much. So the podcast allowed us to get the actual individuals, like General Manager Eng and others, and ask them real questions, not scripted, not edited to make them sound good or take out the bad parts, and just have them do a deep dive on where we are and what we're doing to address things. And slowly started, again, concurrently, between the work that was being done and the communications that were taking place, we slowly started to earn back that trust.
Right, because from afar, people might not understand all of the little intricacies of what's going on, and not everybody cares. But for the ones who do care, who are relying on the system and who are frustrated where things are going, they can go in and get that further information.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the effects that, so obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, it was about December or so when all of those slow zones were officially lifted. Can you talk about some of the impacts that that's had? I know this morning I looked it up, we were on the red line this morning, and it said the red line in, the full length from Braintree all the way in an average commuter in a day could save up to 24 minutes or something crazy.
Yeah, massive. And I think this was what was so interesting about the process was it wasn't just, hey, we need to fix things. Absolutely. Safety is without question our first priority. But it was, hey, how do we go a step beyond? How do we improve? And that was one of the things we were able to do on the red line, which was we got the system to such a state where we were actually able to raise our operating speeds from 40 to 50 miles an hour. But I mean, the volume of work based on our old model, it would take 40 years worth of work. And we did it in 14 months, which is just, I mean, I have to double check because I'm like, I can't go out with that line if that's not real. It sounds great, but 100%. And it was just, it was that aggressive. We have to make these changes. And, we're out there telling the story. They're out there doing the work. But what you really started noticing was we actually ended up creating a campaign of sorts based off of the feedback we started getting from riders. So needless to say, people were none too happy with us March, April of 2023.
Right.
Last summer, we end up, or that summer rather, we end up closing out part of the red line. And during this time, we're able to get to those high speeds. We start getting this volume of tweets where people are saying like, "Oh my God, it's so fast!" Because we can always tell people, "Hey, it's faster. Here's the data."
Right.
But when you get that verification from fellow riders, that means a lot. And we had people complaining like, "Oh my God, I missed my stop because I'm not used to getting there so quickly." So we just started taking the tweets, Reddit posts, what have you, putting them up on screens and station to the point where, and this is where we really knew that the trust had kind of turned that corner, which was the red line just completed, the orange line, "Hey, can you please come and do us next?" They were asking for a diversion, which you don't really get in transit.
Right.
So
right, because a diversion, I mean, there's a lot of short-term pain
exactly.
when you're doing that.
Of course,
you have to ride the bus
shuttle
to work every day for
buses,
3 months or whatever it may be.
And you want to believe that you're going through that short-term pain for a benefit. And when you have that verification from your fellow riders that you're saving time and you can sleep in a little bit later, hit the snooze button and still get to work on time, it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear that. And I'd love to hear the collaboration between what you're doing and telling the story versus what sort of maintenance crews are doing to fix the zones, and then also getting that feedback from the riders, because I think a lot of transit agencies since the pandemic have really struggled to convince riders to come back. And it is improving in a lot of systems. We talked about several systems that are actually showing better ridership than pre-pandemic. But now that you have sort of turned this corner with the trust, have you seen a noticeable impact on the ridership since coming back from the pandemic levels?
So our commuter rail ridership, I think, might be the strongest comeback of any commuter rail service in the country. I know it was 90-something%, with weekends far exceeding 100%. So there's been a bit of a shift. There is the reality of work from home environment where we're instead of seeing kind of that standard 9 to 5, AM and PM shift, we're seeing a little bit more of a steady throughout the day. Like many other systems, you're seeing Tuesday through Thursday is kind of the primary piece, but we have still seen that increase. We've also, in that time, added ferry service to communities that previously did not have that. So that's another kind of influx, and it's really just trying to find through all the different modes that the MBTA offers, and it being the rarity that it offers commuter rail, subway, light and heavy rail, bus, and ferry all under one umbrella versus separate groups. We're trying to figure out what cocktail works best to get people on whatever mode works for them. And that's taking a ferry that takes maybe a little bit longer, but you really love that commute and seeing potentially some whales on your way into the city. Or if it's, hey, I don't want to have to worry about schedules, I want to get on a subway. Or maybe I've moved further out of the city, which a lot of people did. And they're the ones now hopping on commuter rail to come in that way. So it's really, again, just trying to figure that out and making sure that our service remains that level of reliability, which is so important, because if you don't have that, then people can very easily shy away. So we've been doing a lot of trying to reintroduce people to a transit system that maybe let them down in the past, but right now is their best option, because Boston has, I think, the 4th worst traffic in the country. And if you've driven at all here, you've experienced that. So, that's kind of what we're up against. So for us, it's an easy sell. It's like, don't deal with that.
Right.
Please,
Yeah.
please let us get behind the wheel, listen to your favorite podcast or whatever, and let us do the driving for you.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned all of the transit authorities and sort of the modes under one umbrella, because something that I think is a big deal here that you don't see necessarily in all cities in the country is that the fares seem to kind of work across most of the system. And the system's been modernized in that effect too, if you want to speak a little bit to the modernization of the fare
absolutely.
system.
So I believe that was last summer, we were able to welcome what we call Tap to Ride, which is the ability to use your phone, use your smartwatch, your tappable credit card to be able to pay, which works really well, especially for more infrequent riders. Maybe people who, again, pre-pandemic might have got that weekly pass, monthly pass. Maybe they're coming in the office a little less, so it doesn't quite make the same financial sense. They don't have to deal with a vending machine. They can just use what they have. It's really great for tourists. They don't have to understand a new fare media and all the different
trying
pieces.
to pay for a bus or a train can be intimidating for people who don't use it
and
all
we've
the
all
time.
been there. You go to a city, you're like, is there
Like,
an
what
app?
do I-
Is there a fare vending machine? Usually it's a bus, so you're like, I don't want to hold
or
everyone
in some
up.
cases, unfortunately, is like, do I need 2 apps? Do I need an app to navigate? Do I need an app to pay? And it's just like, it makes it so much easier, faster, more efficient.
And I think we're like around like 20 million or something taps. So people are absolutely responding to it, which is, fantastic, because, it takes work to implement these things. But every time I'm going through one of our fare gates, there's always somebody tapping. So it's that nice user-friendly experience. You can focus on getting to your destination versus, what button do I tap? What's a link pass? What's a flex this? And that way you can just kind of just tap, go, ride.
Yeah,
Nice.
Love that.
I'm curious, so obviously the tap to pay is new. There's also been some, in the last few years, extensions to the Green Line that we've seen and whatnot. Are there any kind of, it doesn't have to necessarily be an extension, but modernization efforts and things that are kind of coming up next that you guys are gearing up for?
All sorts of stuff. It's a very exciting time. And again, this is where it's like, we went from the we're sorry, we're trying approach to like, you got to get on board, because there's so much happening. We opened the Green Line extension, welcoming, new cities into our system, which is massive. So just creating all these new travel options for people who lived, otherwise might have had to take a bus and then shift onto a different line. We recently opened South Coast Rail, which is an extension of our commuter rail service going down south all the way down to Fall River. So that's welcoming, again, additional communities that can now ditch the car keys and, read a book, whatever, hop on board and be able to get here. Beyond that, a lot of it, I don't know if it's so much system expansion. Biggest thing in that regard would probably be the ferries. We have added several new ferry lines. We recently also just split one. We used to have to get one between Winthrop, Quincy, and Boston. We split that, so it's just Winthrop, Boston, Quincy, Boston, making it a lot more attractive to those riders as well. We're working on moving forward with regional rail. We're trying to get to a point where we implement our battery electric locomotives, where we're going to be able to have clean, more frequent service. We're going to be starting that off on one line, but slowly growing. And the nice thing with that is, by going with the battery electric option, initially a lot of people were concerned, like, oh, you're not doing catenary. That means that you're not really taking this seriously.
Right.
This allows us to get electric trains out on those same rails before. So basically, if there is existing catenary, or where we put existing catenary, it'll charge. But we don't have to wait to run catenary on all the hundreds of miles of the commuter rail. Instead, people can just hop on and we can start charging and riding. And again, it's clean, it's more frequent, 30 minutes.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I immediately was like, I've definitely seen a bunch of people online complaining about that at one point. And even we live in Austin, Texas, and we don't have much as far as rail is concerned at this point. Hopefully soon.
Cat Metro.
Yes, Cat Metro. They're
Project Connect.
Yes. Well, hopefully it continues to cross the hurdles that it's going through. But I know they've been trying to roll out electric buses, and it's kind of been delayed a bit. We still have the electric buses, but the issue was with like the charging infrastructure not being in time. Like, being able to maintain the levels of frequencies and service with the electric buses, we need to make sure the frequencies can remain before trying to transfer over. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's great.
And we're similarly switching over to electric buses. We had I believe a state mandate. I think we're aiming for 2030. Then we've had some snags here and there. We have already taken delivery of several of them. Nice. And part of it's also technology. When people were looking to do this, there was a concern, especially in Boston, cold weather and batteries. If you're on your cell phone in Boston and it's it's really cold out, guess what? Your battery will die.
We don't have that issue.
Yeah, it's similar, exactly. But you might be drawing more. You might be drawing more, more energy with the air conditioning. So there are all these different hurdles that I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand. But we're definitely progressing and moving forward in that direction, which is great.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I'd love to hear this about the modernization, because we're sitting in a backdrop of the city that has the first subway. Sitting right here.
1897.
Yeah. So just the historical context, and then hearing about modernization is just it's very impressive. Yeah. It's a great story.
It is a challenge too. It's awesome being first. We're very proud of that. But like many realities of the city of Boston, just like our streets were designed for pedestrian traffic and horses, and now we have a lot of one-way streets. There are challenges that come with having such an old system that we have to work around. So all of our subway system, each different line uses different vehicles. They all have their own, dynamic envelope and different length of platforms, because tunnels were dug over 100 years ago, and we're still using a lot of that. So, we also run single track for the most part, which means that we don't have that redundancy like a newer system like New York does have. So there are the challenges that come along with it, but we have a lot of really creative individuals who are being innovative in how we deal with things. So like single tracking, where before we used to shut down a line, we now go around it. So you're not having to get on a shuttle when there's a diversion happening. You're just kind of going around it. You might be a little bit delayed, but it makes it at least a one-seat ride, which is so important for people. We just try to remove any barrier we can during that rider experience.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about the podcast that you were also the host of.
Yes.
MBTA, Spilling the Tea.
Yeah.
Great name.
It is a great name.
It was right
Absolutely
there. We had to.
Yeah. How did that come about, and what has your experience been with this podcast?
Sure. So it really started back in 2019 when I first joined the MBTA. And again, we were at a deficit of trust. We weren't in great shape then. This is even before the global speed restrictions. And we knew we had to do a better job of just telling the truth, just letting riders know what's going on, even if it's bad. So we started doing that. We started posting on social media, letting people, a little bit, pulling back the curtain a bit, providing videos, proving to people that we were actually doing work at diversions when we said we were. But we knew we wanted that more long form content. Originally, we planned to go out in 2020. Something else happened that year, so we decided to kind of shelve it. And when the global speed restrictions went into place, the new general manager came on board. We're like, what if we brought this back? What if we brought this back? So we actually recorded it, I believe, that first summer that he was here. And we launched, I believe, early that fall. And again, it was just, hey, let's start up with, get to know Phil. Let's understand what the real challenges are, have those follow-up questions, because again, not scripted, and be able to get that authenticity. And, we use our social listening, we use customer feedback forms to know what they want. So obviously we welcome people to email us if they have something they want to hear about in a future episode, but we're not shooting in the dark either.
Right.
We know, we had a lot of diversions. How do you plan for a diversion? Right. What's going on behind the scenes? What are you doing to make sure that the shuttles are running and that there's adequate service to get people where they need to go? And, there are all these people who are never in the spotlight, who have fascinating jobs and just absolute mountains of knowledge. The people I call when we're drafting or creating videos or anything of that nature. And I said, hey, would you come on and would you talk? And people just really value that authenticity. It's these are our real challenges. We have to work with all the different municipalities. So, I lived in Miami for a little while. And while you're down there, when you're working with, you're not really dealing with all the thousands of towns. You're working with the county, which is dozens and dozens of towns in one area. Here, every single municipality. So it's not just hey, we're running a diversion. It's okay, we have to call Boston, we have to call Chelsea, we have to call Revere, we have to call all the way up just to make sure that, we're being cognizant of what's going on, because they have their own things going on. Oh, actually, we're shutting down the street that you normally use for shuttles today. And it just, again, it's reinforcing the idea that there is a lot of thought, because if you're external and you're experiencing a delay or anything of that nature or a diversion, it's really easy to be wow, no one's considering me. And it's a show we really are.
Right.
Unfortunately, we can't make it pain-free, but we can make it. We can reduce as much of that as possible. But we've brought in all different types of guests. We've had the general manager, we had the secretary of transportation, but we've also had a local TikTok sensation. His name is Jed. If you have not watched him,
I just finished a trip to Connecticut, and I came back to Boston for 2 hours before my flight out to do the one thing that I've missed most since leaving. I've missed that sound.
He was originally a Boston guy. Now he switched over to talking about Caltrans, but he became a transit advocate, where he would poke fun at us, but he would also say like, this is why the MBTA needs support. And we have had actual 9-to-5 transit advocates on the show as well, and they have their as I like to tell them, it's like, we're two sides of the same transit token. It's like we want the same thing, and we got to hold each other accountable to make sure we get there. But it's been a fascinating experience. We talk about accessibility on the system. We talk about just like historical changes. We talk about ferries. We talk about the future of commuter rail and battery electric and expansion. So it's really just like anything and everything. But it's to show people there's a lot of really smart, capable people who are working well beyond 5 o'clock to make sure this stuff happens. Most of our days start well before and end well after and bleed into the weekends, but we all fundamentally believe in what we do. We believe in the good of public transportation, and we want to be able to deliver the best public transportation we can because we know how much the city, the region really relies on us. So that's really how we've utilized that podcast. Again, if you're interested in Boston transportation, definitely check out Spilling the Tea. Available.
We'll make sure there's a link in the description.
Available wherever you get your podcasts. But it is a fascinating thing. I thoroughly enjoy doing it because I learn. And that's what's so fun for me. I walk in, again, I don't know what the other person's going to say. I hope they know what they're going to say. Yep. But I ask those questions, and I'm like, wow, okay, this makes a lot more sense, or this is why this hasn't been done yet, because these are the issues.
Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons that we really like doing this, because we get to talk to people who are in the middle of it. They're really passionate about it, and it's just fun to see that passion come out. I think one of our favorite episodes has been the KC Streetcar, where we got to meet their marketing and operations team, and just seeing their passion for their community. Oh, yeah. It was amazing to get that. And same for you, like listening to you talk about being able to tell those stories. That's awesome, being able to share that with the public.
And we're all riders, like 99%. If you're experiencing an issue, I'm probably experiencing an issue. So we have that firsthand knowledge. We know the pain points. We're not just like, up on high in an ivory tower driving to work every day. We go through that process, and it's great because the more people you have, the more different routes they take, so the more awareness you get of that system.
Absolutely. Awesome, Andrew, thank you so much for your insight and playing host to us in this beautiful city, and we really appreciate you being with us today.
It was my pleasure. Please enjoy Boston.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Transit Tangents. If you have any questions or want to leave a comment, please consider doing so down below. If you haven't hit the like button already, please do that as well. It helps us out quite a bit. If you have not subscribed on Patreon, this episode actually came out a few days early there. We're going to try to continue to keep that up. It's also another great way to support the show. You can also check out our merch store, linked down below. Without further ado, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your Transit Tangents Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm saving that dough. Public transit's where it's at. Watch me go.